Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos. Shabbos. Good morning. Good morning. We are. We're so blessed to be able to be together again every Shabbat to open up Torah together and to explore themes and to explore meaning and purpose together. So I hope you have your coffee or your beverage of choice for the morning, your matcha or your tea or whatever it might be. We're gonna learn some Torah together. So let's see. Anybody who's here for the first time, we welcome you. If anybody's here for the open book for the first time, welcome to our weekly exploration of the parsha and of the stories of our ancestors and how they might be relevant and meaningful for us. And we'll begin as we always do with Birchot Torah, the blessings of Torah. So I'm going to share with you at this moment. Let's see. Here it is. And I'm hoping you guys can see this. Can you all see it? So let's make this blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishana b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, source of life, who hallows us with mitzvot and commanding us to engage with the words of Torah and to get busy with Torah, to make it relevant and to apply it meaningfully into our lives. Blessed are you, source of life, who is the true teacher of Torah. Baruch atah Yah hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Here we go, everybody. So let's see if everybody can get some reading happening here. Let's see. So if anybody would like to be a reader, I invite you to raise your hand, and we'll get ourselves and get that going in a second, and allow you to unmute yourself if you feel called to read. Hey Ben, it's good to see you, brother. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Awesome.
Good to see you too.
So beautiful. So can everybody see this? This the page in front of you. I'm gonna move
It's
this.
double page.
Yeah, I see it. Okay, here we go. So, what a beautiful parsha! I think some of you might know that, or when we usually arrive at this parsha, it's at this parsha in particular that I generally have a longing to have just Genesis and Exodus as our yearly reading for the most part, and then come into Bamidbar and Dvarim a little bit. But like, I almost feel the pain of apportioning so much of our year to the full Torah cycle when we come into Parshat Toldot with all of the beauty and all the power and the pathos of Parshat Toldot, each and every piece of it. And so we're going to look at a bit of the Parsha through the eyes of the story, obviously, of Esau and Jacob. And one of the things about the Parsha that is most, I guess, that is to some degree a little bit painful is that Isaac, of course, who's this liminal figure in the Torah, the son of Abraham, one of the sons of Abraham, who is the chosen son of Abraham, the one who is bound on the altar in chapter 22. Isaac's life is the life of, to some degree, of liminality and in between. He's passed over, right, in so many ways. And so the parsha begins, these are the generations of Isaac. And immediately the Torah tells us, Abraham holid et Yitzchak, Abraham gave birth to Isaac. Another moment of the story of Isaac being postponed, as it were. And then No sooner has the story of Isaac been postponed in that moment than the story begins with Rebecca's um, being barren, like Isaac's mother, and her barrenness leads to Isaac praying on her behalf, and of course, she becomes pregnant and then is existentially challenged by the struggling in the womb of her children. And Rebecca cries out, Im kain lama ze anochi. And this leads her, if this is the pain of childbirth or the pain of having children or the pain of pregnancy or all of right, all of these questions in that beautifully elliptic and wonderful, obtuse phrase, if this, then why am I alive? What if this, the pain, existential, is it human, is it all of the condition? And she goes lidroshet Adonai. She goes to seek out meaning, or an oracle, and the oracle tells her that 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 you have two shnei goyim bivitnechu shnei leumim mimeayach yiparedu leom milaom yamat v'rav ya'avod tza'ir. This really amazing oracle that predicts, in a wonderfully ambiguous way as well, that you have two destinies that are in within you, as it were. And sure enough, the text is foreshadowing this split between the two children, a split that we know from the story will be even more pronounced as time goes on. And the split in the two children is also reflected in the way that the Torah describes their relationship with their parents, which is very powerful. And so we'll begin here in this source on the page in front of you, source, chapter 25, verse 27 and 28. If I can get a reader for these, it would be wonderful. Would anybody like to read? You can just raise your hand. Or just, let me see. Let me choose a reader here. Mark Horn, I love hearing your voice, and I haven't seen you since all week in our Chassidut class. Go ahead, Mark.
Listen, Genesis 25, 27, 28. When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the outdoors. But Jacob was a mild man who stayed in camp. Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah favored Jacob.
So this Vayigdulu HaNe'arim, thank you, Mark. And this phrase, Esav was an Ish Yodea Tzayid, which you said, Mark, is a skillful hunter. Ish Sadeh, right? The word Ish is repeated here. Ish, Ish. He's an Ish. He's an Ish Yodeh Tzayid, an Ish Sadeh, right? The word Ish, man, is repeated in the Hebrew. It's not in the English. He's a man who knows, and the word Yodea here is also very interesting in terms of our biblical knowing. He is a knower. He knows the hunt. He knows the trapping, and you'll see in a second there are a number of interpretations. Ish Sadeh, man of the Sadeh, the field. The Yaakov and Jacob is an Ish Tam. He's a Tam. He's a simple, pure, wholesome. We'll see in a second. Yoshev Oalim, who sits in tents. A sitter of tents, who stays in the camp, is the way that the JPS renders it. And then verse 28, Vayehav Yitzchak, as you said, and Isaac is favored Esau. Right, so you see the way the JPS translates Vayehav, and he loved him. The word Ahava, he favored Esau. Ki Tzayid Befiv. He was, right, the word here is Tzayid. He is a hunter. And it says here, Ki Tzayid Befiv, this strange phrase, for he hunted, he taste for game, because, in other words, JPS here says, Fiv is his mouth, meaning Isaac's mouth, right? Esav was Tzayid Befiv. He would place, we'll take a look at another translation, but he had a taste for game, meaning he, Isaac, had a taste for game. Or maybe not. Maybe he here is because Esau had a taste for game. But Rebecca favored Jacob. These are the, right, Rivka Ohevet et Yaakov, as you said, Mark. So let's look at, we have a number of translations here of this phrase, right? This is the way the various biblical commentaries, let's look at, in particular, looking at the Everett Fox, right? Look at the Everett Fox. Anybody? The lads grew up, and Esau became a man who knew the hunt. Yodea, he used right because Everett Fox is the most literal of all the translations here. He wants to stay as close to the literal as possible. And he writes, he was a man who knew the hunt, which is a beautiful rendering, isn't it? Ki ish Yodea Tzayid, who knew Yodea Tzayid, the hunt. And then he writes, a man of the field. He repeats the word ish. But, ve, instead of ve and, Yaakov was a plain man. He says, but, in contrast, as if the verse is coming to teach us an important distinction and to some degree a hierarchy. In other words, there is right this contrast. But Yaakov, Yaakov ish tam, plain. Yoshev ohalim, staying among the tents. Yitzchak grew to love Esav. Do you see what Fox did there? It's funny, I didn't realize I'm talking about a hunt, but here's Fox. But Yitzchak grew to love Esau. He grew to love Esau, right? If you look back into the Hebrew, that there's a kind of path here for Yitzchak. Vayehav Yitzchak, and Isaac loved Esau is rendered by Fox as Isaac grew to love Esau, Esav, for he brought hunted game for his mouth. And then again, but Rivka loved Yaakov. Rebecca loved Jacob. What's the nature of the of of this of these two characters? The two this characterology of Esau and Jacob, Esav and Yaakov. This this differential, this contrast between these two characters. And how does it relate, of course, to the love and the favoritism that seems to be very much related to who they were? This is like the perennial question as we arrive at this parsha each and every time we come through it. So let's read the grandson of Rashi and some of the other commentators on the verse that he was a Yodea Tzayid. He was someone who knew, right? He knew how to hunt. This hunting phrase, and let's look at the particular character of Esau in this moment. I'm going to invite. Let's also, if people have questions, I see Rabbi Elise. Elise, go ahead.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
So last night at our Shabbat candle blessings conversation, someone said, how do we handle these Torah stories that are so violent and set one against another, a brother against a brother? And this is also one of my favorite portions. And I'm so struck how at the very beginning of this, the description of Jacob and Esau is actually the opposite of who they become. And I know what we're going to read. I know what the rabbis do with all this text, but there is nothing in the context of how Esau lives and how Jacob lives that suggests that Esau is the idolater, except in the ways that he's going to be pushed into a certain place. And there's everything, as we're about to see, about Jacob that suggests he's the deceiver, even from his name. And even in the text, in Robert Alter's translation, or Everett Fox's translation, it's present tense. Rivka loves Yaakov. Rivka ohevet. It's not past tense. And there's something built into the text here that needs us to embrace Jacob more than Esau. So as a mother, that just troubles me so deeply. And I want, as we go through this text, to ask that we not fall into that rabbinic trap of putting one brother against the other, but seeing if we can understand maybe what's behind that. What is it that Torah overall is trying to say, symbolically, not literally, about these people? Thank you.
So, um, of course, so of course the yeah, so symbolically, yeah. So the text is is I'm assuming again, and I'm assuming that the text is not a video of what really took place, and I don't even know what that means. And it's clear the text is trying to teach us something, and the text is trying to tell us a story, and the text will tell us a story that, um, and then the rabbis will tell us a story about how they hear the story and how they read the story. And so um, it's certainly the case that the text is. Let's learn. Let's learn a little bit. Then we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, we'll see. So Esau is a hunter, and Ish Yodet Said Ish Sadeh. Now, the Rashbam, the grandson of Rashi, in his understanding of Ish Yodet Said, he's a very literal, right, commentator, and he says Yodet Said Latsud Said Lahavi. He was a hunter of game, and he retrieved the animal to serve as food. In other words, he reads this as in a very, as you just said, in a very literal way, in the simple meaning of the text is that he's a Yodei Tzayid, right? The text here is not signaling to us anything about his moral character. He happens to be like, let's just take the Torah on face value, says the Rashbam. He's very much interested in the pshat, in what's the simple meaning of the text, and the text tells us that Esav, right, his name means a doer, from the word lasot, right? Esav, he does. He's very involved in movement, right? He's very verb. He's a very verbed individual, right? From the very meaning of this myth is to draw some kind of contrast between these two characters. Their names, right? Esav is the one who comes out first, and he's a doer. He's described also in the text as, right, we know more about him first than we know about Yaakov. He's also described as an Ish twice. He's double the man that Jacob is in the text. And in many ways, right, it's exactly the opposite of what you said, at least is exactly true. In many ways, the text lifts up Esau in the beginning, at least. And the text is, on its simple meaning, is like, oh my goodness, this guy he's a doer. And and he also has this biblical word, Yodea, it's a very powerful word in the biblical jargon. To be a Yodea is a good thing, not a bad thing. There's something of Esau here that is extremely powerful, extremely poignantly powerful. He's Yodea Tzayid, and the Rashbam here, right, the grandson of Rashi, says very simply, there's nothing in this phrase that should lead you to believe anything other than what the phrase is telling you. He's Yodea Tzayid. He knows how to bring back food, right? He is an actor on that stage. He knows how to feed and nourish. But of course, Ibn Ezra, the second source here, Le'olam, this is the second source here, Ibn Ezra, also a medieval exegete and commentator, says something. He begins to quote from the Midrashic tradition, which is earlier than him, and he says, Yodei Tzayid, what does it mean to know, right? Why does the text have to tell us that he knew how to trap? It says, knowing how to trap an animal tells you a little bit about, right, something about this character. He is someone who knows how to be skilled as a trickster. Ibn Ezra says that his skillful hunting is a general quality of a hunter, is that they know how to trap. Kirova chayot baderech, he says, mirama yitpeseu. That in order to be able to trap an animal, you have to be skilled at knowing how to be cunning. Now, this is not like, this is this trope, of course, of Esau in the rabbinic literature that then also comes back very powerfully in the way that Rashi reads that Esau's character is a person who knows how to trap. Source number 5 here in Rashi, right? not going in the path of his grandson. His grandson not going in his path. He's usually a very straightforward reader of the text. And here he says something about Esau. He says, "Latsud v'liramot et aviv befiv." Why does the Torah tell us that when in verse 28, after we know what their character is like, that there is a connection between the character and the way of Esau is described and the love that Isaac had for him? And also the innocuous and really not innocuous, I said the strange phrase "kitzayed befiv," that Jacob, that I'm sorry, that Isaac loved Esau because kitzayed befiv, he would literally, it means kitzayed, he would trap befiv, in his mouth, or befiv can be with his mouth. So this leads the rabbis in that kind of the way that they're reading the text, and it lends itself to that. Is they're reading? He reads the text as that there was a skill that Esau had, that he could use his mouth. Here it's not Isaac's mouth, but his own mouth in order to deceive his father. Latsud uliramot et aviv befiv, v'sho'alo abba ha'ech me'asrin et hamelach et hateven, kisavur aviv shehu medagdeg b'mitzvot. So this rabbinic gloss that Rabbi Fishman at least was trying to warn us against is very clear, right? The rabbis want to read Esau as a character, and they hang their hats, their yarmulkes, on a particular phrase that is unclear. When it says that Isaac loves Esau because he was a hunter and would place hunting or hunted food in his mouth, does that mean because he fed him? Does it mean because there was something of Esau that was so different, right, and such a contrast to who Isaac was, that Isaac was drawn, and kind of like the attraction of opposites? Or does it mean, as the rabbis say here, that there was something about the Esau's character that is revealed in this phrase, that he was able to be a deceiver. He could make Isaac think that he was one way when he was really another way, which is greatly ironic, of course, because it was Jacob, as Elise said, who was really, in the end of the story, the one who did exactly that. Right? So here, they read a deceptive quality into Esau's character. And they say that Esau was a hunter who hunted with his mouth. Now, Jacob is also contrasted as well. We're going to stop here before we go to Jacob and see if there were some comments on this. We can go to Iva. Go ahead.
Hi. Well, thank you both. You've said quite a lot on the commentary already, but I actually read this initially very differently. First, the issue of being ish basadeh, I see this as nature. This is the brother who loves the outdoors, who loves the fields, who's in nature, who has the nature connection. And I see Jacob as in the tent as having the social connection, the social skills kind of connection, the being with others as opposed to being with nature. So those were the first two things that really struck me. And then looking at the commentary from the Rashbam, I see him as, living in medieval France, living in an agricultural society. I think he was taking it literally, and I felt it that way too. Just he was hunting and then being someone who regularly gives her, one of the pleasures of my mother now at 97 is just eating. It's one of the great pleasures. So my feeding her, my bringing her something, a piece of meat, a cooked vegetable, just some special dish. So I really saw this too as sort of a natural bond. It's an extension of his being in nature, his being with animals, and then his relating to his father in that fashion. And Ibn Ezra being more urbane in his interpretation, in his life, in his experience. I could see how, again, it would list in that sort of other direction of thinking more psychologically of deceit. But I didn't get that from the readings at all, like in my first reading this morning. Thank you. Jibarti.
Yeah, Shamati. Shamati. So the we're gonna get somewhere. I'm not stopping here, and I actually a lot of the things that we're saying about the text are already in the text that I'm bringing from other commentators, but I'm happy to hear them from all of you. This is clearly a story that each and every year reverberates and acts as a kind of, I think it's a very powerful window into what's real, favoritism and dynamics between parents and children, and how karma and the past works itself out through our lineage. And I want to get to a place where we actually, where I think the most important commentator of our generation makes a really powerful insight into what's happening between Isaac and Esau. But at first glance, looking at medieval commentators, there's clearly a thrust to see and read an Esau character in a particular way. And again, like we can understand the context in which Jewish writers are trying to see Esau over 2,000 years of history, where the rabbis saw Esau as a kind of archetype for others, for the other, right? For those who weren't of the descendants of Jacob, and to see and read all kinds of things onto Esau that might not be right in the biblical story, but that's also part of Midrash as well. So beautifully done. Again, I'm going to call on Sharon, David, Richard, and then we might not get to everyone, but in the first run around here. So go ahead, Sharon.
I guess my comment is more about what this says about being a parent and the two different kinds of parenting that you have here. And what struck me so much is that you have Isaac, who has a kind of instrumentalist view of parenting.
Mm-hmm.
That, in other words, you bring me this thing that I love,
Mm-hmm.
and then I love you. Whereas you have Rivka and Jacob. Jacob, he's just sitting there. He doesn't have to do anything to earn Rivka's love. She just loves him for who he is. It's not about do this for me and then I will love you.
Right.
And I just want to say, I was just happened to be watching The Crown last night, which was all about parental favoritism. It was about Margaret Thatcher and her son who goes missing, and he's the twin. There's also a daughter, and the daughter is very upset because it's clear that Margaret Thatcher loves the son more, and she confronts the mother and she says it's because he's better than you because he does all these things. So again, it's this instrumentalist view of parenting, which I now look at and see is very critical. I'm very critical of it. So it sort of makes me elevate Rivka all the more.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah, beautiful, Sharon. The Pirkei Avot says, "Ahava shetluya b'davar eino mitkayem." Conditional love does not last, and you'll see in a moment with the Shlach Kadosh, Isaiah Horowitz, a very similar idea. It's also problematic. It's also problematic in a certain way here because even that non-instrumentalist approach, Rebecca loving Jacob, right, doesn't say that Rebecca loved Esau in the same way. So why not loving Esau in the same way? And not just that, it seems very clear that that Rebecca's love for Jacob, for whatever it was it protection? Was it overcompensation? Was it, what in Rebecca, it's so important to bring our frames back and bring the frames forward and have them meet in the middle in a way. But, what was it in Rebecca that, identified with Jacob? And in every direction here, we'll get a little bit closer to what you just said in a moment. Okay. David, yeah.
Shabbat shalom. I'm very much on the same page as Sharon. I would say that the more we approach this story every year, and the more I approach it and get away from Jacob and Esau and get into the parents, the more I understand it. Particularly condemning, in a lot of ways, to me, of Isaac. This whole thing of he liked the meat, or he, and she brings him the stew later on and that kind of thing. To me, it's a question of vision. I mean, Isaac has no vision. He never did. He looked up and he saw the camels. Rebecca looked up and saw Isaac, and it's quite amazing that Isaac literally becomes blind.
So Rebecca is the one here with the vision. She can see, and she saw something in Jacob that she didn't see in Esau.
So I almost feel like we're gonna wind up running out of time before I actually get to where I want to. So I'm actually gonna move forward. I'm sorry, everybody, but I need you. Given all the comments here, I really feel like I need to redeem Isaac, and I need to redeem this story on some level, because I feel as though we're not reading it the way that I don't feel we're reading it the way that the tradition has wanted us to read it and extract from it what we need for ourselves. And I just need us to read this story. And I see what everyone's saying, and it sounds to me very similar to what I hear every year when we come to these stories, which is boo on the parents who aren't good enough parents, boo on the parents that put one child against another, boo against favoritism, boo on shame on the Torah for and the rabbis in particular for reading into these characters their own issues and their own conditions and their own social constructs. And woe is to us who are the inheritors of this clearly this myth that is continued to perpetuate itself when brother goes against brother and sister against sister, and up against below and rich against poor, and a perpetuation of all of these splits internally, externally. And I kind of feel like we need to read it a little bit I'm more generously and a little bit more accurately to the text, because the Torah is extremely beautiful in this story in its usage of verbs and particular words. And so I really feel like we need, just for a moment here, to just take a breath and look at a piece of this parental thing that David just brought up, to look at how the parents interact with the children in the verse at stake here, verse 27, really, right? Where verse 27 and then verse 28, where Jacob and Esau are divided between the parents. And so I want to invite here this piece, which is this. The general understanding of the text is that Jacob, right? So I want you to look at this text here. I want to underscore something that David said, and then I want to move to a different place. So I want to underscore what something you just said, David, which was, I think, really accurate, which is that at least in the biblical stories that we have, the mother knows the children, and at least, right, moving through the biblical text, like the mother is able to see something and name something in these children in the stories that is not always obvious to the readers or to the other characters in the story. A. B. Look at this beautiful, the beautiful reading of Naphtali. I'm sorry, let me see this 1 second. The Naphtali of Rubshitz, the Rubshitzer Rebbe, on why Rebecca. How did Rebecca know to choose Jacob? Right. So the Rubshitzer says Isaac, who grew up in the house of Abraham, surrounded by the righteous and the pure, did not know the ways of the tricksters, and therefore could fall for Esau's trickery. But Rebecca, who grew up in the house of Bethuel and Lavan, knew tricksters. She was able to see through Esau and his lies. Now, again, let's start with the basic premise here, which is that we don't know from the text that Esau is deceptive. We don't even know from the text until Jacob sells the birthright, buys the birthright from Esau. We don't know that he's deceptive. But something in the tradition wants to read them that way, but then also reads and understands the love of Isaac for Esau as problematic, but generally forgives him for that love, because after all, in the writings of the Rubshitzer, how could he know what being, he was they see Isaac as an ish tam. They see Isaac as a kind of simple person. He grew up in Abraham's household. He didn't know from tricks and from lies, right? It was very direct. But Rebecca, she could see through it. Rebecca knew something, right, about Esau that she didn't see in Jacob. It's kind of interesting then, because then she is the one that introduces trickery to Jacob, right? Jacob starts off buying the birthright in a very obvious way, in a very direct way. He says, listen, I want your birthright. I'll give you some lentil soup. That's not deception. But then the deception that enters into the story is actually through Rebecca. Rebecca is the one who comes up with the story and says to Jacob, Jacob, you better go put on the skins of your brother. It's Rebecca who is introducing a kind of quality of deception into Jacob's life that she could recognize and maybe employ at the right moment in her elder son Esau. So that's the Rabshitzer, and to some degree, that's what you were saying, David. It's like, listen, Rebecca could see something both in Jacob and in Esau that maybe Isaac, because of his lack of vision, could not see. But I want to also, and I want to bring in this text from Robert Alter, and then lastly bring in a piece from Aviva Zornberg in the next 7 minutes, and then we'll open it up for all of the wonderful and important comments that you guys have to have on this. Okay, so Robert Alter, the great interpreter of text, writes that the Hebrew phrase "kitzayed b'fiv," he hunted or brought game in his mouth, is unclear whether the idiom suggests Esau as a kind of lion bringing home game in its mouth, or rather bringing game to put in his father's mouth. The almost grotesque concreteness of the idiom may be associated with the material reason for Isaac's paternal favoritism. Pointedly, no reason is assigned for Rebekah's love of Jacob in the next clause, right? So this is back to this grotesque image of the favoritism that is rooted to some degree in the concrete or in the conditional or in the material. And that, right, underscores what was also said, which is, if you look at source number 9 in the Shla, that Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah favored Jacob. Isaac's love was love dependent on an external factor, the instrumentalism that we began with, right? Of such a love, we are told once the external factor disappears, the love disappears as well. But Rebekah loves Jacob without an external factor, right? That's the ideal love that we were speaking to earlier, that Iva was speaking to, right? It's not dependent upon anything. That love remains forever. And that's why the word that is in the form, I think Rabbi Frischman at least said this, ohevet, that Rebecca continues in the present moment, right? She's continuing to love. There's a continuous tense, right? Signifying that Rebecca's love for Jacob was an eternal one. And in this reading, right, again, Rebecca is elevated to the one who has vision, as David said. She's elevated to the one who comes from the background of deception. She knows and isn't taken in, where kind of Isaac is almost pathetic in David's reading. He has no vision. He is deceived by his son, or he loves his son for reasons, either deception or because he sees something in his son, right, that is something that he wants for himself. There's something that Esau can do that tricks Isaac. So Isaac is to blame on some level here for allowing himself to either be deceived, or for not having vision, or Isaac is deceived because something is fed in him literally and emotionally that leads him to favor his son Esau to the great detriment of the entire story, right? So that's kind of like where we are, right? So I wanted to read Aviva Zornberg, who is, I think, our generation's greatest interpreter of Torah, in my opinion, and read her reading now of this story, of specifically the Isaac-Esau relationship, and how profoundly I think she identifies something very, very poignant and moving in the Isaac-Esau favoritism. Generally, we understand the favoritism to be that Isaac saw something in Esau that he was a direct contrast to him. He was kind of like this reclusive, quiet, flat character, lacking vision, as you said, David. And here is this, Ish Sadeh, a man of the field, this kind of lusty, powerful, hairy, doer. But one notices, if you look at sources 13 and 14, that both Isaac and Esau are described as men of the field. When Isaac first meets Rebekah, or Rebekah first sees Isaac, as you said, David, she sees Isaac and he sees camels. He is noticeably in the field, right? He is in the field, lifnot arev, verse 14. Isaac went out, vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh. He goes out to take a stroll, to walk or to pray, or to do something in the field, the sadeh. And when you look at the story of Esau, he is described as an ish yodei tzayid. He is somebody who knows how to trap. He is an ish sadeh. And something in the way that Rashi reads this is very unique. When Rashi comes to translate what it means to be a man of the field in the case of Esau, he calls him ish sadeh, right? Adam batel, right? He is a man who is batel, who's kind of has no regular occupation. Vitzodeh bekashto chayot ve'ofot. And from this kind of place of not being engaged, of being without, right? Batel means to be kind of empty, without any purpose. He then becomes a hunter. And look at the way the brilliant and remarkable reading from Aviva Zornberg. The Zohar makes the most challenging comment, she writes, undercutting our vague assumption that this love is a case of attraction of opposites, that the blind recluse needs the lusty outdoors energy of Esau to nourish some inward hunger. On the contrary, the Zohar claims everyone loves his own kind, one who is similar to himself. What Isaac loves in Esau is precisely the hunter, the alienated, disintegrated consciousness of one for whom all of the noble privileges and promises of life have dissolved in blood. Isaac recognizes the fury evoked by animal life, the desire to extirpate what has no proper existence. In his own case, existential helplessness led to withdrawal, to a rigid respect for the priorities and structures of the given world. To Isaac, the spectacle of Esau's despair turned to destructiveness suggests a passion for truth, an intolerance for palliatives, a kind of tortured authenticity. To Isaac, Esau is the analytical mind obsessed with the unreality of existence, a figure of Byronic melancholy. Esau appeals to his father's heart. This is a son who deeply needs blessing from a father who, despite all external differences, intuits the rhythm of his own despair. The paradoxical similarity of Isaac and Esau is indicated by the notation of in the field. Isaac is first encountered by Rebekah in the field. What emerges from such a subtle layering of meaning is a portrait of Isaac imprinted with a deep death knowledge of his own binding, a face turned toward the dying of the light, darkly narrating his story to God. The field in which Isaac walks, he transforms into the language of prayer. The field of Esau's darkness, however, is a field of silence. The tension of ambush, the release of bloodshed provides the illusion of a vital heartbeat in emptiness. Isaac's love for Esau is a knowing love that seeks to bless, that is, to animate and populate that emptiness. The jolting, disconnected trail of the hunter, the sense of a drudgery, in Esau's words, for I am weary, the work that is devoid of substance, that is batel, vacant and void. Most of all, perhaps, the sense of dismissal of the weighty past. Of what use is to me is this birthright? And Esau despised the birthright. All of this gives us an Esau who is a prototype victim of the 1,000 normal shocks that flesh is heir to. Isaac has retired from the fray. As the rabbis teach, the evil impulse has ceased to trouble him, but Esau staggers from murder to murder, indeed, according to the Midrash, from woman to woman, in search for the consummation that will include and redeem all traumas. A consummation devoutly to be wished, says Hamlet. To die, to sleep. This reading of Aviva Zornberg, in full rabbinic mode, right? In full rabbinic mode, right? She has allowed herself to enter into the complexity of not only the Esau character as it is in the Bible, but also the Esau character as it is the repository of all manner of rabbinic projection, rabbinic, essentialism, rabbinic schlepping of stuff, throwing it onto Esau. She then reads it back into a moment where Esau carries the trauma of his father Isaac with him. Esau becomes the identified patient of a system that is longing for resolution. She sees in Esau and Isaac's relationship not the attraction of opposites. She sees in it not the tragedy of a poorly parented, Isaac and Rebecca, one of whom instrumentalizes the child, the other of whom is an essentialist parent who loves the child just for who they are, and sees not none of those things, but rather she sees in the system, right, the pathos of the past brought into the present, where Esau is animating Isaac's own unresolved traumas, own unresolved business, own unresolved shocks, and right, and slings and arrows, right. She sees in this powerful moment um, the possibility of resolution, and in that reading, potentially, Rebecca doesn't have insight. In that reading, in some way, what Esau really needed was a blessing from Isaac. In that reading, um, we miss the mark when we read this love between Esau and Isaac uh, as being animated by food. There's a nourishment that Esau is bringing to Isaac um, that is healing for the system, and that somehow the story is lacking. So I just wanted to bring that. I know that there's a lot. I can see we have about 12 minutes, a little bit less than 12 minutes, about 9 minutes. So I'm going to call on people just to share your voice and share what came up for you, and I'll go in order here. Ilana, please go ahead.
Shabbat shalom. So, what what I have to say is very much in tune with Aviva Zornberg. I so one thought is that part of what they're all struggling with is a system of hierarchy that only allows one person, like a hierarchical system with one man in charge, rather than a cooperative system that could have had both Esau and Jacob inheriting um, as ancestors. So I think about what is the healing here that we need? If because my sense is we need to invite Esau back in. And so just another thought too about the healing, the connection between Isaac and Esau. I think about Isaac healing from the broken heartedness trauma of the Akedah. And one of the things he did was to rebuild the 100 wells of his father. So he healed through his connection and immersion in the earth. And Esau was a man of the field and the earth. And here we are at this juncture, like we could hold these competing contradictory truths that we both need it to be the ancestors of Jacob, but we also need to be the ancestor of Esau and Isaac in this sense of those who held the earth to be sacred. Um, uh, but so much of the demand and the need we have as a species right now.
So it's so beautiful to hear. It's really beautiful to hear that we are descendants. Some people might say it's not beautiful to hear that we need to integrate Esau, especially after 2,000 years, where Esau became, as a character, became typologically connected to Christianity and to Edom and the Edomites and so on, and Rome. But we have many, many mystical sources over the last 2,000 years that see the split between the brothers, between Esau and Jacob, this internal, uh, this fighting, as again as another split that needs to be healed, and the hairiness of Esau and the smoothness of Jacob. It's a very powerful thing to imagine the quality, the complexity of hair. We could talk about hair for a while, and so does Rabbi, Aviva Zornberg talks about hair, but being hairy in the Torah and in other mythology, of course, means complexity and messiness and things that get tangled. One of the reasons that Buddhist monks, monastics shave their head is because they want to be free of attachments and to be incarnate. There's a quality of incarnational quality, as you said, of being sama and being of earth and being of the land that has been a continual trope in Jewish history. People without a land, people who became disconnected from the body in some way. And so there is a wonderful invitation to union here between those parts, and in that way. And certainly now we don't really have much of a choice, do we, to be those who love, honor, and revere the earth and what it offers. So thank you for that, Ilana, whose name means tree. Beautiful. Go ahead, Kathy Lynn.
I actually don't have anything to add right now. I kind of want to.
Beautiful. Okay. There's a lot going on. So Barbara Z, so thank you, Kathy Lynn, for that. Go
Oh,
ahead, Barbara.
thank you. Yes, so much has been said. And then David, you kind of brought in what I was thinking so much about as this was going on about what um, what kind of person we value today, how much we talk about people, men of action, and what our values are, and how we are in this continual kind of dance and debate and tension between these two things, and how real it is to, as was just said, how much this needs to be reconciled for our own wholeness and health and balance in maybe a less patriarchal society going forward. So it's just, to me, just interesting. And the other thought that I had was, they're twins. So when we call somebody an elder and a younger, when they're twins, when they're really actually the same age and should perhaps have the same balance in relationship, that is somehow we're not really holding that, where it's not like he's 10 years older. Um, what does a minute mean? Or something like that. So that's it from me. Thank you for
Yeah,
letting
I,
me.
I can speak. I can speak to that very personally because I'm a twin, and I have a twin brother, and for years we were 2 minutes apart, which I don't think it was the case because I've subsequently rethought that. I don't think we're 2 minutes apart, no matter what the story is. I think we're more like 10 minutes apart. But um, I think that that's exactly the point. Is that this story is a story of how, in the Cain and Abel story, there is a clear older and a clear younger. But if you want to make the problem, if you want to problematize this story, the story of blessing one over another, you couldn't have a greater raising of that of putting that in stark relief than creating a scenario where they're the same age and yet there still is this choice point. And in fact, the choice here is so profoundly problematic that the choice is, it has, this whole story has to be created, right? Just think about the story. I mean, you don't have the story in the Ishmael and Isaac story. It's very clear. The text makes it very clear. Like, Sarah doesn't have to deceive Abraham. There's a Hagar, but here in the same lineage, now you've raised the ante, and it just points to some stories that actually don't go away in a way. Like, I wonder if there is a world where, is the Torah telling us that there will always be some version of identification between parents and their children, and the work is of the parents not to do that? Is the Torah telling us that it's okay to do that? That it's inevitable that you will do that? Is it saying that, there are so many questions here, so many questions. I would venture to say that all parents, all people have an experience of more connection with one human being over another in our daily living, even between parents and children. And that's the brutal truth the Torah wants us to teach us. It doesn't mean that we don't have blessings for all of our children, But I think that there's certainly the Torah is saying something about that on some level. We're gonna we're gonna we're gonna stop in a moment. I'm gonna call on let's see, Roberta. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I want to hear what everyone else has to say also. I'll just say real quick. It seems like the invitation here is for us to meditate on and, moment to moment, what do we do with the preferences and fidelities which arise because we live in form? And how
Exactly.
can we put them into a context that is healing and unifying? That's the challenge, and
Totally.
I love that it's just makes it so hard. And I just want to say to redeem Rebecca, because everyone can be redeemed here. She had a prophecy at the beginning of the parsha.
But the prophecy,
Follow.
but the prophecy was ambiguous. That was the clear. The prophecy was the prophecy was ambiguous. I was thinking a lot about that too, Roberta. The woman who is brought to us through a strange series of tests, right? Where the servant of Abraham, she's the chosen one because she met a certain test that he created, and then she herself, her whole destiny is determined by this really strange oracle whose prophecy is exactly ambiguous. Varavi Avot Sa'ir can be read in both directions. The older will serve the younger, or the younger will serve the older. It's really unclear.
Okay.
Right?
See, David, you take it to another level. I
No,
was
no,
only reading
no.
it
But
that one way.
I do. I certainly think that Rebecca can be redeemed. I think that every character here has a redemptive
Right.
moment, and they're all acting. And this is the story of the Bible. The Bible is interested not in non-duality. The Bible is interested in the very real messy things that happen in day-to-day consciousness, in our normal everyday living. And in our normal everyday living, we carry epigenetically and in moment-to-moment awareness all of the stuff that didn't get worked through. And I said this last night. It didn't get worked through. Isaac didn't, Isaac's traumas didn't get. If we're going to be anachronistic, let's be really anachronistic. Isaac needed to have his traumas worked through before he had children, right? Because it just, he wound up, Esau, poor Esau becomes the inheritor of all of these things, and so does Jacob. And they wind up playing out this story, right? And then it plays out in Joseph's life too. And so, in some way, it behooves us to understand this as our own lives too. We also play out these stories, and the way out, obviously, is going through, and we have to be aware of it. So much more could be said. It's a really rich, obviously, very rich parsha, but we have to stop because we're about to go into our prayer room, and we have to put our paraphernalia on. And I just want to bless all of you in in continuing to rest in this throughout the day. Think about it, absorb it. We're going to be coming back to the Parsha at 11:15. Please join us for Open Up with Rabbi Kohler Esses, and inviting all of you to transition into your talitot, into your prayer shawls, and so on as we move into tefillah. Mm. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Maybe you're like me, you're a little bit like worked up a little bit from the energy of Torah study. Like your energy is like, wow, that was so much. We didn't even get to speak and so much to say. And Torah is so juicy and we need to have 2 hours for Torah study. But I'm feeling gratitude right now just for technology. Wow. Hi. Nice to see you wherever you are. You could be in Belgium like Michaela, or around the corner like some of you are here in New Paltz, and maybe you're in the Romemu Center with Rabbi Colorestis. Maybe, like our friend Bob, you're just alive and well this morning in your beautiful space. Seeing you, Bob, makes me so happy. So mode ani. We're so grateful this morning for Shabbat, for community, for Torah, for teachers, for our bodies. Sing with me. Modeh ani lefanecha ruach chai vekayam. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai vekayam shehechezarta bi. נשמעתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך שחזרת בי. נשמעתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך. מודה אני לפניך רוח חי וקיים. מודה אני לפניך רוח חי וקיים. שחזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך. ראשית חוכמה יראת אדוני. שכל טוב לכל עושיהם תהילת עומדת לד. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא. אתה בראת, אתה יצרת, אתה נפחת בי ואתה משמרה בקרבי. ידעתי לילה ממני ולהחזיר בי להוציא לבוא. כל זמן שהנשמה בקרבי מודה אני לפניך. As long as breath is within me, I have a place to go to remember the giftedness of life. As breath is breathing me, as will is not the dependent source, it is happening in me and through me. And so as long as that is there, I am aware that this is a gift. Baruch atah Adonai hamachazir nishamos Lifgarim Mesim. Please rise, everyone, for the morning blessings. Together with me and Rabbi Kohler. I'm sorry, where is Rabbi Rivera? Rabbi Diane, join us for the morning blessings, okay? We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasach vivina Le'avchin bein yom uvein laila, you make us conscious beings.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani bet salmo. You make me in your image.
Amen.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani bat chorin. You make me free.
Amen. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokei shasani Yisrael. On one level, I'm so thankful to be a Jew, just to be a Jew, and I'm also so thankful for all of my fellow brothers and sisters who are God wrestlers this morning.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, bokei ivrim. You open up those places where I can't see.
Amen.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. You clothe the naked and protect those who feel and are so exposed.
Amen. Baruch atah Ya Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim, for discovering what binds us that no longer serves us so that we might release it.
Amen. Buchat Shekhinah Loteinu Ruach Haolam, Zokefet Kefufim. You straighten the downtrodden.
Amen.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu ruach haolam, rokah haaretz al hamayim. You give us firm ground to stand on.
Amen. I'm feeling that ground beneath my feet right now. That's good. Mm. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu haolam, she'asa halikol tzarki, for the blessings of various forms of privilege that each and every one of us have.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozer Yisrael bigvura. You give our people strength.
Amen.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu ruach haolam, Oteret Israel b'tifara. You give us a sense of glory, even if we're not aware of it.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Otek onosein la ya'ev koach. You give us an extra breath, that witness inside that says, one more moment, one more, you can do it.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavir sheina me'inai utnuma me'afapai. You remove sleep from my eyes and the sloth from my eyelids.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Take 30 seconds, everyone. This is your half-minute blessing. Dump just all the blessings. Just do the blessings. Call them out, verbalize them to yourselves. Close your mind, close your eyes, and just go inside and be like, for the blessing of, for the blessing of, for the blessing of, for the blessing of, for the blessing of this morning.
Of windows to see with outside and bring it into here.
Amen. For the blessing, for the blessing of health, for the blessing of shelter, for the blessing of awareness, for the blessing of parents, for the blessing of family, for the blessing of friends, for the blessing of students, for the blessing of wisdom, for the small blessings of this day, this Shabbat, this moment, and for all of the brachot, all of the blessings of being that are everywhere around us, and for all of your blessings this morning. Let us say together, Amen. For the blessing of language, for the blessing of words. Rosh Amar, everybody. Rabbi Rivera.
Baruch Shema Behaya Haolam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Ose Bereshit, Baruch Hu, Baruch Omer Ve'ose, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Gozer Umkayem, Baruch Hu, Baruch Meshalem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriyot, Baruch hu. Baruch meshalem sachar tov lere'av, Baruch poder matzil, Baruch shemo. United in that unifier we are. Yachidchei ha'olamim, Melech משבח ומפואר, עלי עד שמו הגדול, ברוך אתה אדוני. מלך מהולל בתשבחות. אשרי, do we have too much of anything? Is it possible to say again and again how happy, how content are those who come to this house to commune with the divine? Or should you be priests and Levites? Or as Rashi says, just those who come and sit in this house. האומר תהילה לדוד בכל יום 3 פעמים. This psalm of David HaMelech, whoever sings it 3 times a day, המובטח לו שהוא בן בת העולם הבא. We are assured of a place in this world to come. אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד יהללוך, סלה.
אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד יהללוך, סלה.
פותח, we open to this blessing, את ידך ומשביע לכל חי רצון.
פותח את ידך ומשביע לכל חי רצון.
פותח את ידך ומשביע לכל חי רצון. ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם. הללויה, הללויה, הללויה.
So as we arrive at the last of the Psalms, each day, Psalm 150, we recognize that this psalm is a psalm of celebration and aspiration, and especially on Shabbat, where we want to call out praise, being, through every instrument we know, and especially through every breath that we breathe, that we long for this full expression of praise. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, el bikocho, hallelujah, bikia uzo, hallelujah, begevrosav, hallelujah, kero gulo, hallelujah, meteka shofar, hallelujah, never vechinor, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, hallelujah, mitof umachol, hallelujah, beminim v'ugal, hallelujah, with cymbals that chime. Oh, hallelujah, titillate through Kol hanishama, let every breath praise you, Yah. Let every human praise this gift. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Let all these faces praise you, Yah. Let every place that we go praise you, Yah. Let every human flourishing be a praise for you, Yah. Let all our work be to build your love with everything that everyone does. Let this be our praise for you, Yah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. When I look out and I see all your faces, I say hallelujah. When I see the Nishmat Kochai in Hannah and in Emet and Hava and Kathy Lynn and Sarah with Andrea and Daniel, I say hallelujah. When I see Ellen and Jill and Sharon and Len and Tamar and Nehemiah, I say hallelujah. So let's sing Nishmat Kochai together when you find yourself, or you can just take the next 2 minutes or so as we sing Nishmat Kochai together to bring all of the vitality in your life into your heart space and into that place, where you say, Nishmat Kol Chai, the breath of all life is animating me at this moment. And you know that it says in the Holy Zohar, in the Bible of Jewish mysticism, it says that on Shabbat all souls are released into consciousness, into this place again in a profoundly real way. And so we might enact that at this moment by bringing in this pre-Baruch Hu moment all of the souls who've come to visit you today, and bring them into your heart, into your inner talit. Your heart is your inner talit, Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, na, 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 na. Sing with me. Nishmas kol chai tvarech et shimcha Hashem Hashem Eloheinu Nishmas kol chai tvarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Dini nai 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 ay 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 oh ay 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 oh ay 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 oh ay 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 oh ay nai nai no nai 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 oh ay 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 oh ay 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 V'lo kol basar, let the spirit of all flesh תפאר אותי רומם זכרך מלכנו תמיד מן העולם ועד העולם אתה אל ובלעדיך איננו מלך גואל ומושיע. This relationship with you, source of life, is in time and in space and beyond time and space. We have nothing that is our absolute but you, love, truth, compassion, source of life for all beginnings and all endings. That power that animates all beings, master of birthings. Ever awake, ever present, the witness that you are, you awaken those who sleep deeply, startled as we are by the call to conscience. You are the ultimate source, the ultimate coach, giving us the strength to continue to evolve and to grow into places of constriction and places of blind spots. We are called to become more human, more loving, more compassionate. Would that our mouths could possibly speak all that needs to be said to exclaim the beauty and the majesty and the miracle and the mystery of being here. אין אנחנו מספיקים להודות לך, יא אלוהינו ואלוהי הורינו, ולברך את שמך על אחס מאלף אלפי אלפים, וריבי רבבות פעמים הטובות שעשית עם הורינו ועמנו. על כן איברים שפילגת בנו ונורשש. כל לבבות יראוך וכל קרב וכליות יזמרו לשמך כדבר שכתוב. Kol atzmosai tomarna yami chamocha. Who like you? Mi yit melach umi yishvelach umi ya ya yam dai ay 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 oh ya ay 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 oh ya. Amazing. Amazing. האל הגדול הגיבור הנורא, אל עליון קונה שמיים וארץ, נהלל לך ונשבחך ונברך את שם קודשך כאמור. לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני, וכל קרבי את שם קודשו. When the great Hasidic Rebbe of David of Chortkov, the Chortkov Rebbe of David, was on his deathbed, and as his students, his devotees stood around him crying, he said to them, he said, you know, in every generation from now on, he said, why are you crying? They said, because you're leaving. He said, you know, in every generation, there'll be people who come along who sing the songs that need to be sung for that generation. It'll be so beautiful to be alive at that moment. There is no, he said, no generation that is alman, that is bereft of people who sing the songs of praise, that are greater even than the songs of King David. And at that moment, as he said the word David, his name being David, he passed. And so here we are at this moment of singing praises and coming to the close of our praise section, and we say our praise, this generation, this moment is the greatest praise that we could offer at this moment, this moment's praise. האל בתעצומות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא, שוכנן מהרום וקדוש שמו וחסוב. רננו צדיקים באדוני, לישרים נעשה הילה, בפי ישרים תשרומם, ובדברי צדיקוס תסברך, ומלשון חסידוס תסקדש, ומקרב קדושים תסלל, ובמקלוס רבבוס עמך בית ישראל, ברינה יתבר שמך מלכנו בכל הדור והדור, שכן חובת כל יצורים לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ולא יראינו, להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להלל ולקלס על כל דברי שירוס ותשבחוס דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך. Please rise if you are able. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. היה למלך הגדול והקדוש בשמי בנחות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלכי העולמים. Chatzi Kaddish, everyone, an Aramaic pause between parts of our prayers. Yitkadal.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
עמד וברכירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו.
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך. לעולם ומעלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה
בריחו
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא אין לרסי.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Rivera.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi David, Rabbi Diane, Jane, Barbara, everyone, friends.
Shalom, everybody.
Good Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. So we have a wonderful moment here where we can invite all of you who are we don't have unmuted, like muted is for sound, but muted visually, to first of all open your video camera just for a moment so we could just say hi, just so we can see faces, because letters on a screen doesn't do it. I don't know, kind of want to see people's faces, see their eyes, see their smiles. I'm gonna just move around, and we have a little Mentimeter. If you haven't met the Mentimeter, it's right there in front of you. Who is here? And we mean this, as we do every week, broadly or narrowly. Who is here, meaning your name. It could also be what you're bringing this morning. Last night we had exhaustion showed up and praise showed up. And who's here this morning? I'm going to keep looking around my screen, flipping through to see panim, see the faces. But Rabbi Mira, who's here in the Mentimeter?
We're colorful and we are vulnerable and we are healing. Some travelers staying home and some are in exhaustion.
I get it.
Rabbi Diane, whom do we see?
Diane, we can't hear you. You're muted. Sorry.
Sorry, I thought I had unmuted. Redemption, mourning, angels, colorful, Asav healing, hope, travelers staying home, weary traveler in life.
And I'm looking around. Look, everybody, look to the screen around you. Some people see. I'm seeing my dear friend Alan. And who's above you, Alan? Out loud, just say to someone who's in the room with you. Howie Goodman. Hello, Howie. To your right is Lisa Sokolov, and Mara and Aaron are to your left on my screen. Above you is Mara, and Ellen is to your above right. Keep looking around, see who your little community is of people on your screen.
We have Sarah, a friend of Ahaban Emmet. Welcome, welcome. And Alina, Sarah Tobias, Ben, Eden.
So beautiful. Let's see. We have Leah Lynn. I say hi. I see you that you're here in our neighborhood. Liana and Neil and Judy and Jay. I see so many folks here. This is our Baruch Hu moment. And as such, the Baruch Hu is a call to community. And as we say and said for, I think, something like 12 or 14 years in the shul, that when we call to community, we mean that everyone is welcome in this space, every human, in all of the different beautiful forms, the divinity that is diversity, that is the differences. And so each and every one is, B'Tselem Elohim, is a fractal of divine, infinite value, regardless of sexual orientation and gender identification and political preferences. No matter where you are geographically, if you enter into this holy space, we are all children of spirit in this space together. equally receiving the blessings, although on this Shabbat, preferential treatment is given to one son over another. In this space, we are all children equally of the one. And so we welcome you. And we welcome all of the fellow travelers here in this moment. Each of you in this moment being infused with the power of our prayers and the power of our ancestors. Hopefully reaching deep into your heart to say, you are seen, you are loved, you are a part of this great whole, each of you, and all of humanity. And so when we call out to this community for the minyan and say Baruch Hu, and you respond with the Baruch Hu as well, we also mean to call on all creation and all humanity as well to be together in humility and together in co-arising, as it were. I'm taking that from our Buddhist friends, but I mean it when we rise up together, the co-arising. We are codependently arisen and rising together. And so I invite you, if you're able, to please rise for the Baruch Hu at this moment. Baruch Hu et Adonai ay yadadadadam hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Leolam Vaed. Ay, 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 lai, lai. La da da na da nam. La da da na nam na da. La da da na dam. Baruch Ducha Ashchina Eloheinu Eloteinu Ruach Haolam Yotzeret Or, holding light and darkness, Oseh Shalom, making peace, Uvoret et Hakol. Ko yoducha ko yisha v'kol ko yomnu en kadosh kadonai v'akol yira memuchasala yotzer hakol ve'el baruch ni'imot yitenu lemelech el chai v'kayam zmirot yomer v'tish b'chod yashmiu ki hu levado po'el givurot useh chadashot matzmiach yishuot borei refuot, as you take in, each and every one of you, light and the power of perspective as we are taken high above to the balcony of existence where the angels and where the galaxies look upon us and say, humanity, pull together from all of your four corners, from every place, an Or Chadash, a new light, and may it shine. A light that is composed not only of light, but light and dark, of this and that, of above and below, of right and left, opening ourselves to what is new. Or Chadash, a new light, Al Tzion Ta'ir, V'nizkechu lanu Mehera le'oro. Sing with me, Or Chadash. Or Chadash. Al Tzion Ta'ir. V'nizkechu lanu. May all of us merit to see it, Mehera, quickly in our day. Baruch Ata Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot. Avai Rabbi Avtanu, with a great love you have loved us, source of life. Rabbi Mira, will you take us into Avai Rabbi with a great love?
Ahava Rabba Ahavtanu Ahava Rabba Ahavtanu Ahava Rabba Ahavtanu Ahava Rabba Ahavtanu. What a great love you have given us. This love so great that brings light to our eyes. May Torah be a light to our eyes, gathering us all with heart and possibility. We gather us together in all the ways, be it through your prayer shawl, holding tzitzit in one hand, all fringes in one hand, or opening up your arms to find the possibilities with you. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותולכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה. ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך עוד יחדך באחווה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. And in love we hear Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And the call to love. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. והיה אם תשמעו על מצוותיי.
היום נאהבתם עיניכם אותו בכל לבבכם ונפשכם, נתתי בתארצכם איתו יום מקור, שעשתה דגניך. איזה בשרך לימדר וחלת בשבעת האיש שמנו לכם, ונפתה לבבכם, בשרתם ועבדתם לבכם. Adonai Moshe Modaber El Bnei Yisrael Marta Lihem Yasu Lemesiti Agan Vebidehim Ledor Otam Nadu Atiti Agan Abeti Lecheder Elechem Letziti Reintem Oto Zechraitem Et Mitzvot Adonai Vasitem Oto Adonai Elohechem Every morning we remind ourselves that in addition to gratitude and to praise and to community and to integration of light and dark, we commit ourselves to listen, learn, and love as a prerequisite for redemption and for singing liberation songs. We remember the truth that love will set us free, v'yatziv nachon, that is established. And as we bridge truth and geula and redemption, we rise if we're able. Tilot le'el elyon. Baruch hu mevorach Moshe u'Miriam uvnei Yisrael lechanu shira. Besimcha rabba ve'ameru chulam. Mi chamocha Bailim Adonai mi kamocha nedar bakodesh nora tehilot osef leshira chadasha shebechu geulim leshimecha asvas hayam yachad kulam hoduvim elichu v'yameru Adonai melech le'olam v'en Tzon Yisrael Kumma b'yezrat Yisrael Uvtechinu mecha Yehuda v'Yisrael Go'aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. Adonai Svatai Tiftach. We begin Amidah together, invoking their ancestors. They too who sang a song of liberation, our mothers and fathers, and all the holy ones who came before us, the great bodhisattvas, the righteous ones, who transformed hearts and minds into places for divine presence and divine love. We bring them in with us as we step backwards and as we step forwards. Open our hearts and our mouths to sing a song of praise and love. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Ha'el Hagadol Hagibar V'Yanora El Elyon Gomen Chasadim Tovim V'konei Hakol וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניכם למען נשמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרם.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם. מחלחל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גיבורות, ומדום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמנתה לך חיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
קדש את שמך בעולם, שם שמקדישים אותו משמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה לזה ואמר, איי איי קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כמונו, אדוני כמונו. אז בקול רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנסים לעומת סרפים, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, עיני ינני 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 ברוך יבוא אדוני ממקומו.
ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו, לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור ולנצח נצח נצחים.
ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשיני עוזך. על ידי דוד משיח צדקך.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור הללויה.
לדור ודור נגיד גדלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם וגמל גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני. HaKadosh. Please prepare yourselves to receive Torah this morning. Hold hands, hold hearts, in silence, in standing, in sitting, in whatever way. As we say, Moshe, please, great teacher of Israel, come into our hearts and teach us Torah this morning. Yismach Moshe, b'matnat chelko.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today, I want to dive into this parsha.
Rabbi Diane, 1 second. Yeah. Let's do the Amidah together. We'll come back.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry.
Okay. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our heart be acceptable to you, Yah, our rock and our Redeemer. Lord, prepare me to be your sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. with thanksgiving. I'll be your living sanctuary for you. We elevate our children and our children's children and our friends' children and children in general, all children who are sanctuaries of divine goodness. May they be blessed this morning as we extend ourselves, our hearts, and our mind to include a child or children or something in the world that you are bringing under your talit at this moment as we pray for the children. Yivarechecha.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך. יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך. יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. וישם לך שלום. שלום, שלום, שלום. שלום, שלום, שלום. שלום, שלום, שלום. וישם לך Shalom. May these wings of blessing be upon them.
Amen. 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 Kaddish Shalom, everyone. If you can rise, and that's okay with you, please rise as we conclude our yearning this morning before we turning to learning. Yitkadal v'kadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Mama b'yama divrachirus v'yamlich malchus b'chaychon u'v'yomechon v'chayrechol beit Yisrael b'agala v'zman kori v'yimeru.
Amen. ישמר רב המבורך לעולם עלמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה.
ברכו.
לאלה. מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמרן ועלמה באמרו.
אמן. תתגבר צלותו נבואתו לכל בית ישראל כאדם אבו דבשמיא ויאמרו.
Amen.
Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chaim. Vitality and aliveness, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, for us and for all of our people and for the world itself. And let us say, Amen. Oseh shalom b'miromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel. V'yimeru. Amen. Say their Hotza'at Sefer Torah, the removal of the Torah from the Ark. Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'ein k'ma'asecha malchusecha malchus kol olamim u'memshaltecha michol ador v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imlok, leolam v'ed. Adonai oz, give us strength and wisdom le'amo yitein. Adonai yevarich et amo b'shalom, av harachamim. היטיבה ברצונך את ציון. תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי לך לבד בטחנו, מלך אל רם ונישם, אדון עולמים.
ויהי בנשוא הארון ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני ויפוצו אויביך וינוסו משנאיך מפניך, כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר אדוני בירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו.
בינרחץ מנישה מקדישה, קדישה יקירה נאמר תושמחן. בינרחץ בינרחץ מנישה מקדישה, קדישה יקירה נאמר תושבחן. יהי רבה קדמך תפתח ליבי באורייסה, וסתשתם משאלין דליבי ודליבה דכל עמך ישראל, לטב ולחיים לישלם. אמן. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו.
אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו.
גדלו לאדוני איתי, ונרום ממה שמו יחדם. לך אדוני הגדולה והגבורה והתפארת והנצח והחוד, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ. לך אדוני הממלכה והימין נעשה לכל ראש. רוממו
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 אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו והשתחוו להר דם רגליו קדושו. רוממו
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 אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו והשתחוו להר קדושו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו. היי ללי לי, היי ללי לי, היי ללי לי, הלילי הלילי, ay la 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 la. Da da la la. Oh hi ay ay ay. La 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 la. Hey hey hey. Hey ne le le ne 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 ne. Hey le ne. Hey ne 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 ne. Hey la la la, ma ma ma, ma ma ma, la la, ma da la la, ma da da, hey la la, hey la la la, hey la la la. La 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 la, hey la 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 la. Exciting to be with you all for Open Up this morning, for the not only the open book where we open Torah, we continue to participate, but we open up the book of Torah, as it were, and then also call up for an aliyah. And so this morning's Open Up with Rabbi Koller Esses. Now, Diane, we're so excited. We know that you were chomping on the bit to teach us Torah this morning, and so we're thrilled. If it, that means that you have some good juicy Torah to teach us this morning. That's what it means. So we're all ears, and we're with you as you open up.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. So great to be here with you today. Yeah, I was in a deep Amidah meditation reverie and came out and said, oh my God, it's time to teach Torah, but it wasn't. But here we are now. And what I want to talk to you about today is what I feel is a deep lesson that the Parsha teaches us about fear and holding faith alongside fear. Now, I don't know about you, but when anyone says, don't be afraid, I'm like, whatever, right? Because if you're afraid, you're just afraid, right? It's like, don't be afraid, but I'm afraid, and it's there. So I want to see what the Parsha teaches us about what we can hold alongside fear. I'm going to share my screen in a minute and some Torah, and we kind of go in and out of screen sharing so I can connect to you, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes to hear your thoughts. So here I go. Okay. Hopefully people see the screen. I just have to disable annotation, important thing to do these days. And here we go. So I see today's Parsha study or study with you as a kind of really sort of mining the Torah for usable wisdom for us. So it's going to be very, on one hand, symbolic, but also very pragmatic. And I start with an opening verse from our reading that we're going to read in a few minutes. And from everything's from chapter 26. And here, verse 24, if I can call on David to read it. I'm sorry, Rabbi Ingber to read it.
I love being called David. I just wasn't sure if it was another David. So okay, cool. So we're hearing opening verse. Okay. Vayirai lav Adonai balayla hahu, vayomer, Anochi Elohei Avraham avicha, al tira, ki itcha anochi, uverachticha v'hirbeiti et zarecha, ba'avur Avraham avdi. Now Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh was seen by him on that night and said, I am the God of Avraham, your father. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you, and I will make your seed many for the sake of Abraham, my servant.
So thank you, Rabbi David. Back to that friend or family member telling you, don't be afraid. However, if they say to you, don't be afraid, I'm going to be with you, that already feels very different. Right? So I want to examine, by going backwards a little bit, how we got to this moment. How we got to this moment of a sense, hopefully, that Yitzchak, Isaac, feels at this moment that God is with him, right? And also that the God of his father is with him. So how do we get to this moment? So let's go back a little bit. And I want to, before we look at Isaac's process, I actually want to do a little rehabilitation of Isaac, of Yitzchak, because so many people think about Yitzchak as only a passive forefather, or the forefather that was deceived, that was almost sacrificed. Isaac has a lot of good reasons actually to be afraid, considering his father almost was inches away from killing him. However, the Torah tells us something else about Isaac that I think we often forget, and very often liberal Jews forget, that he was a great man. So let's look at these verses briefly. So the first verse in 12, and we're still in chapter 26, we're just a few verses from the original verse. And Isaac sowed and reaped 100 measures, or 100 gates, a really sort of mythic number. And Adonai, God, blessed him. And then the next verse, most important, Vayigdal ha'ish vayelech haloch v'gadal ad ki gadal ma'od. The man became great and went on becoming greater until he was exceedingly great. So that word great, Everett Fox is the wonderful Bible scholar and translator, is translating the word gadal, vayigdal, as great. So that verb is used 3 times. So we know Isaac was a great man because the Torah is telling us that. And how is he a great man? He had herds of sheep and herds of oxen and a large retinue of servants, and the Philistines envied him. So he was so great that even another people knew he was great, right? That's great. And they were jealous of him, right? You're great when other people around you are jealous of you, right? So that's a real sort of external signifier. So if we can hold Isaac's greatness at this moment, and even hold, for the sake of sort of traveling on our way from fear to faith, or fear and faith, hold our own greatness in mind, or our own strengths in mind, in order to take the action we need to take to get to faith. So, we're I don't know about you, I'm very aware of my weaknesses, and it's always a struggle to kind of raise up my strengths alongside those weaknesses. So raise them up. If your weaknesses are at the forefront, raise up your strengths. Okay, so now let's see what the action is that Isaac does that gets us to that moment of God really making God's presence felt. So Isaac, actually, I'm going to call on someone else to read. Ben Pearlstein, are you here?
Hello.
Hello. Great to hear your
Shabbos.
voice. Shabbat shalom.
So we're
on
18?
In 18, yes.
Right. V'yashov Yitzchak v'yachapor et be'erot is that Hamayim? It's
Hamayim.
Hamayim asher chafru b'mei Avraham aviv. Vayisatmum plishtim acharei mot Avraham, vayikra lahen shemot asher kara lahen aviv.
Good. And the English, please.
Oh, sorry. Yitzchak again dug up the wells of water which had been dug in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines having stopped them up after Abraham's death. And he called them by the same names by which his father had called them.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So what a wonderful image, right? His father's wells were stopped up, right? That's so ripe as a symbol for, intergenerational transmission that gets stuck, or intergenerational dynamics that get stuck. It's one of the reasons that we all go to, or many of us go to therapy or psychoanalysis. And what Yitzchak does, he digs up those wells of water, right? He unstucks the flow here. And he respects his father by calling them by the same names by which his father called them, right? So far, so good, but we're going to see he does much more than that. Asher Chaim, if you could read 19. I know I just surprised you by calling on you. Let's see, I'm going to ask to unmute. Go ahead.
ויחפרו עבדי יצחק בנחל, וימצאו שם באר מים חיים. Yitzchak's servants also dug in the wadi and found there a well of living water.
So Yitzchak's servants, remember we heard he had a large retinue of servants, and they dig as well, and they find living water, right? Be'er mayim chayim. So that's such an evocative image. And if you recall, the place that Hagar went to when she ran away from Sarai afflicting her was Be'er lachai ro'i, the well of the living one who sees me. So, a well of living water is evocative as healing, a healing force. And it's also the place that Yitzchak goes to after the Akedah, right? He goes to presumably see Hagar at Be'er lachai ro'i. So a force of healing, some force of protection, a force of God being there with you. Okay, so now just to shorten things a little bit, I'm kind of mapping out what Yitzchak does next. He then, after it says he named his father's well by the names his father gave them, he actually gives them his own names, and he does that based on his experience. So now we see Isaac's creativity and presence. So the first one is esek, quarreling or bickering. The second one, hatred, animosity, right? And this is all based on his fighting with the Philistines over these wells. And the third one, so beautiful, space expanses. And so look at this verse. Asher Chaim, if you could read this verse as well, if you're still unmuted. Let's see. If you're not, I'll see if I can find you.
ויעתק משם ויחפור באר אחרת ולא רבו עליה. ויקרא שמה רחובות, ויאמר כי עתה הרחיב אדוני לנו ופרינו בארץ. They moved on from there and dug another well, but they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehovot, space, and said, indeed now Yud-Heh Vav-Heh has made space for us, so that we may bear fruit in the land.
So I love this idea of walking away, just walking away from the hatred, the fighting, going to another place, right, and somehow finding space, right, and that sense that God made space for us, right. So moving away from the negative forces to find that expanse, that merchavia, like that, God's expanse, as it says in the Psalms. Okay, so far, what do we have? We have Yitzchak as kind of rehabilitated in his strengths and greatness. We have him connecting to his father's wells, right? And respecting his father's, names of them. And then him unstopping them, digging them, and naming them for his own experience. So kind of taking charge of that perhaps process of transmission. Okay, so now the Me'or Chaim, the 18th century Hasidic master, tells us what this spiritual process really means, abstracts the process from its sort of concrete details, and tells us how it's a kind of path to faith. Okay, so he starts with this beautiful, beautiful verse from Yirmiyahu, from Jeremiah. And Jeremiah is one of the prophets of doom and destruction before the first temple was destroyed. And he gives voice to God's sense of abandonment, right? And God says, they have forsaken me, a source of living water, hewing out cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. So God describes God's self as a source of living water. So let's hold that image of God as, just flow, right? Flow. And these broken pipes or these broken tanks, right, that people construct cannot hold that living water. Okay, so then the Me'or Chaim says, Adonai Yud Vav He is a source of life flowing forth into all living beings in every way. There is none but God, and all who cleave to God are attached to the root of life whose waters never fail. This is true so long as there's no separation on our part. For if sins come to separate us from the font, life itself will disappear from our midst. Okay, so sins, the Me'or Chaim says, are a barrier from that flow. They block or stop up the flow. From God's side, there's no interruption of the flow. So from God's side, the flow is always coming towards us, but only our sins separate. Okay, so I'm going to skip this wonderful verse from Yeshayahu, but it basically is a proof text for how our sins are a barrier, what a sin is, a barrier between us and God, and go up to what the patriarchs did. The patriarchs opened up the channels of mind or awareness, teaching all who were to come into the world how to dig within themselves living waters, to cleave to their font, to the root of their lives. So I love this idea of God as a root of our lives, right? An ever-flowing fountain. After the death of Abraham, however, the well springs of wisdom were sealed, blocked by the Philistines, representing the evil in humans that overtook the world. And then Abraham's son came along, Yitzchak, following in his father's footsteps. He taught the people of his own generation how to dig again into that living font of waters. He taught this by means of various wonderful and mysterious processes of the mind. Isaac returned and dug the wells of water. All this came about by means of faith, which is the prerequisite for all. You need full faith that the glory of God fills all the world, that there is no place devoid of him and none beside him. So an assumption is God's presence fills the world, right? And that anywhere we turn, there is but God. By means of that faith, you will come to long, to yearn for a desire and attachment to God. And in this way, you come to your root, because that attachment, right, will lead you to dig, given your assumption that that flow is always possible. That the servants of Isaac digging in the valley, Nachal, they were digging in. Why? Because our souls await for God. So this is the idea of Nachal, which is a stream or a river. It is based on the verse from Psalms, Nafshenu chikta ladonai. It's an acronym for we set our hope on the Lord. He is our help and shield. So again, this sense of a belief, which is a prerequisite, and that from that assumption that God fills the world, this longing comes for that ongoing flow, and that longing for the ongoing flow will lead us to dig within ourselves for the wells that will provide that flow. So I'm going to unshare here and take a few minutes to have your thoughts. How might flow and presence sort of maybe mitigate our fears or give us a sense that we're not being abandoned, right? That there's some presence with us even at our worst moments. So I'd love to hear any thoughts. And Jamie Askin, I'm going to unmute you. So great to see your, oh, okay, there you go. See your face, Jamie.
Hi. Yeah, so this is something that's come up this week often in conversations that I've been having, and it's like being in the flow by having that divine faith and that trust is like being liquid. It's going, it's going with the flow and not allowing yourself to go into the places of fear that might stop you up and put barriers between you and the things that you desire in your life, the peace and the joy and the happiness, the awareness. When you're in flow, like with nature, with all that is, then these things that come up don't have as much resonance. They're not as impeding, I think.
I love that, Jamie. And one question, you said, by not allowing yourself to go there, do you think we have a choice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All
Absolutely. Right. I mean, from a Buddhist perspective, we have the choice not to go there.
There are times when I feel, at least, that either the fear or the depression just comes over me, and there's no choice.
Yes, I've definitely been there.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
But from time to time, I mean, like right now, I'm sitting here and the sunlight is streaming in, and I'm watching it and through the clouds, and I'm like, wow, that's magnificent. That's glory.
You have a sense of that presence. Beautiful. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, Eden Foster.
Can I ask you?
Yeah, Rabbi David.
I just want to say, so according to what you just said with Jamie, in some way it could be that we could boil down all of our spiritual practices to I don't know, something hearing.
Echo.
Okay. So it could be that we reduce all of our spiritual practices to one thing, which is all spiritual practice is giving us the space or the capacity or the strength to make better choices in those moments, like I spoke about last night. And that what some, this, Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler in his book, Striving for Truth, and right, the point of Musar, the point of Hasidic practice, contemplative practice, is actually, even though these things come as if there is no choice, there is what is a nikuda, there's a bechira moment, a moment of free choice, a moment of choosing. And like, even though it feels as though we can't choose so much of what comes to us, the spiritual practice is to give us greater choice points at the moments where we do have a sliver of choice, where we can, like, my son was going out somewhere yesterday, and he was going with the entire family, and he turned to me, he said, Abba, are you coming? And I said, where are you going? He said, we're going out, we're going to go climbing. And I said, I have to work. He said, Abba, you have a choice. That's what he said to me. And I thought about it, and I actually ran through that the entire day, what that really meant. And I felt very strongly that when Jamie just said that, you kind of pushed her and said, well, does it feel like you have a choice? And she said honestly, and you both said honestly, well, so much of what comes at us doesn't feel like we have a choice. But then, like you said, Buddhistically, Jamie, I'd say, like, also Jewishly, that there's a moment here where there is like a strengthening of that choice that you were about going to dig up the wells and get the flow going again. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
I love that, Rabbi Ingber. And one of the reasons I brought up, the kind of restoration of Yitzchak, the image of Yitzchak, and wanted to hold that up, is because I feel like when I'm in my strength, I can kind of push away the forces of darkness, or at least hold them at bay, much more readily than I can when I'm in my weakness, right? So spiritual practices as sort of keeping me connected so that I'm not overcome by those dark forces.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I know Eden wanted to say something, and even though, there she goes.
Hi, thank you. There are two things here that are so beautiful and sort of heartbreaking and heart opening at the same time. One is the image of Isaac redigging the wells and creating the flow in the wells again. It feels like a way of continuing his relationship with his father and communicating with his father, thinking about that they never spoke again, or we at least never know of them speaking again, and that to create, for him to create this flow and keep the names feels like a communication with his father that he never was able to do when he was still here. That is just really incredibly beautiful for me. And
Eden, one second.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful point, And if anyone's wells deserved to be stopped up, they would be Yitzhak's, given the fact his father almost killed him, right? How can he receive the legacy from his father given their relationship? Right. So,
Right.
Wow, what courage. What courage. So thank you.
And greatness, for sure.
Greatness. Yeah. Thank you for lifting
And
Go on.
thank you. And the other thing that struck me is in the Hasidic Masters commentary, the rendering of faith there, that I think sometimes I think of faith for myself as something that will provide me with some certainty or resolve uncertainty a little. And I think it's so incredible that here the faith creates the desire, creates the yearning. Faith, there's no like offer of faith creating something certain. It's that faith continues to put you into a space of need, and that's like the yearning is the, I don't want to say goal, but goal, like and that there's no that faith brings you into a space of without resolution and like into the question instead of into the answer is really powerful for me too.
I love that. And I would say that at least here, that what faith brings you to is the flow, right? The flow of presence, which is
right.
No answer whatsoever, right? So
right, and doesn't resolve, right? Like it doesn't, yeah.
And flow, and a sense that you're not abandoned. Like there's some presence, not only your own, but a presence with you. Yeah.
Right, for sure. Thank
Sarah
you.
Greenberg. Wait.
Sorry. I was going to say, so I completely agree with what both Jamie and, sorry, I'm spacing your name now. Now I can't remember your name. I'm sorry. Edith, thank you. Sorry. The bar is like blocking it. I completely agree with you. And I feel like, especially now when we're in such an uncertain time, it's so important to have that emunah, that faith, and to know that Hashem is still watching over all of us, even though things aren't at their best points and there's so much uncertainty and sickness and horrible things going on in the world. There is still that feeling of being able to have that faith and knowing that one day things will get better. And I feel like the metaphor, almost like the metaphor of having the well that stopped up, is just so beautiful. And it just, again, reminds us that we just need to keep having faith and things will one day get better.
Thank you, Sarah. And talk about the lack of certainty. We don't know when that day is. And we just have to hold on, right? To hold on. Yeah. Okay. Aaron, I'm going to.
I was just thinking with all this imagery about water, how elusive water is in the land where Isaac lived. There's lots of sand, there's lots of rocks, there's very little water. It's the most valuable thing there is. And I thought that was a wonderful metaphor for how elusive faith is and how it can dry up. And it is, it is great when you have it and it is hard to find. And I thought that this story told that very sweetly.
Yeah, especially at this moment, how elusive faith is, right? How elusive. Absolutely.
We stopped up really quickly.
Yeah, it's a precious, not commodity, but force. I'm not even sure it's a force, but yeah. Thank you. All right, we're going to take 2 more quick comments, and then wrap up, come in for a landing, as Rabbi David would say. Okay. Let me just see. Hannah.
Good. Hi. So I want to speak again about the wells, and I agree with where Eden was going. I'm seeing the wells that were blocked up by the Philistines in a way, it makes me think that Yitzchak blocked up those wells. He blocked up his feelings toward his father, and he had to break through them, in a sense, break open his heart to let the love, the feelings flow out, let the water flow through again. He had to break open the rock around his heart to be able to reconcile with his feelings, opening the same well that his wells, plural, that his father had made. So he had to break through them, and initially he named them the same wells, and let the water, the energy, the love flow through them. And then I get the sense that when the flow had come through and he, Yitzchak was feeling, I don't know, perhaps refreshed, renewed by the water, by the flow, he could give them his own names. He could make them his own. Beautiful. And move forward after he dealt with the closed well, the closed heart from his past with his father.
Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, how many of us sort of emerge from our growing up in our whatever dysfunctional families we have? God willing, some of us here don't have dysfunctional families, and come out feeling like all stopped up. And how long does it take to really break open that rock for flow? David Willinger, last comment, and really quick.
Just absolutely building and just completing the sentences that preceded. The names of the wells, if I didn't understand, was something like this.
I can't hear you. You're not loud for some reason.
How's this?
Yeah, better.
To build on the sentences that I just heard, just to complete them, really, the wells, as I understood it, had names like discord and arguing and getting at each other. Yeah. And then the last one was spaciousness. So it really feels like certainly feels like my family. And how do we get beyond that terrible negativity into something more spacious? That's all I want to say. But just the name, I mean, it's just incredible. In the Bible itself, the names of the wells, sound like so many Jewish families. Never mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a little clue is given in the Torah itself, which is Yitzchak moved away from that place. Right? He moved away from the places of conflict, and he's like, he received space or had a sense of expanse when he moved himself away. So how do we kind of take ourselves away from that? So this aliyah, and I'm sorry I can't take everybody's comments right now, and thank you for your beautiful sort of additions to this Torah study. This aliyah is for those who still have a sense that there may be stopped up wells inside them, stopped up, places where there are flowing fountains of living water underneath. And for those who need and want the courage to break those places open for the sake of a deeper divine flow.
ויעזור ויגן ויושיע כל החוסים בו ונאמר אמן. הכל הבו גודל אלוהינו תנו כבוד לתורה יעמוד. The entire community who was called to receive this blessing this morning, and in particular Ya'amod, representing the community as the laner this morning, the one who was reading on behalf of the Kahal, Avi Green, for this morning's blessing for the community, and also reading on behalf of the community for the first Aliyah, Baruch Shnatan Torah le'amoisa b'kedushato, ve'atem hadivekim b'yah Elohechem, chayim kulechem hayom.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו עם כל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה. ויעל משם באר שבע, וירא אליו אדוני בלילה ההוא. And God Adonai appeared to him, to Yitzchak, on that night. Vayomer Anochi Elohei Avraham Avicha. I am the God of Avraham, your father. Al tira ki itecha anochi. Do not fear, for I am with you. Uverachticha v'hirbeti et zaracha ba'avur Avraham avdi. I shall bless you, and I shall multiply your children for the sake of Avraham, my servant, my beloved. Vayiven sham mizbeach, vayikra b'shem Adonai, vayet sham aolo, vayichru sham avdei Yitzchak be'er. Va'avimelech halach elav, Va'avimelech halach elav migrar, va'achuzat mere'ehu, uficho sar tzba'o. Vayomer alehem Yitzchak, madua batem elai, ve'atem snetem oti, v'tishalechuni me'itechem. Vayomeru ra'o ra'inu, ki haya Adonai imach, vanomer tehina Allah benotenu, benenu uvenecha, v'nichreta verit imach. Im ta'ase imanu ra'a, כאשר לא נגענוך, וכאשר עשינו עמך רק טוב, ונשלחך בשלום, וכאשר עשינו עמך רק טוב, ונשלחך בשלום, אתה ברוך אדוני. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chaye olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. מי שברך אבותינו ואימותינו, הורינו, הוא יברך, תברכי את כל אלו שעלו לכבוד המקום, לכבוד התורה, לכבוד השבת. May the source of life bless all of those who came this morning to stand with the flow, with the cisterns. And may they be blessed, Rabbi Koloresis.
May this holy community be blessed with the strength and the courage to look within and find out all the stopped up places and break each one of them open one by one for the sake of flow and presence and a divine accompaniment.
And let us all say, Amen. Ya'asher kochachem, Ya'amol aliyah shenit, Katria bat Chayalea Yosef, Kathy Lynn Solomon, for this morning's second opening up to the Torah.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu im kol ha'amim ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Vayas lahem mishteh, vayachlu, vayishtu, vayashkimu vaboker, vayishavu ish leachiv, vayishalchem Yitzchak, vayalchu meitaho b'shalom, vayihi bayom ahu, vayavo avdei Yitzchak, vayagidu lo, al orot habe'er asher chafaru, vayamru lo matzanu mayim, vayikra oto shiva, al ken shem ha'ir Be'er-sheva ad hayom hazeh.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Kathy Lynn, are you also making Birchata Gomel, a Gomelet?
Yes, I mean, almost, very close. I don't know. We could bridge it.
Okay. Rabbi Rivera?
Welcome, Kathleen, to a blessing for healing. A blessing for healing. May you be sustained by this community. Mi shaber achavatenu Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov, ve'imotenu Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, veLeah, hu yevarech Katria bat Chaya, Leah, veYosef. שעלתה היום לכבוד המקום ולכבוד התורה ולכבוד השבת. You who have come today to give honor, to be in the honor of Torah and of Shabbat. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור אותה ואת כל משפחתה. May you be kept with you and your family. וישלח ברכה בהצלחה בכל מעשה ידיה. May you be brought success and health in your family and all those who have become your family. וישלח ברכה בהצלחה בכל מעשה ידיה עם כל ישראל אחיה ונאמר
Amen.
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 Amen. Healing of this community for you, healing of your name, your holy name, and the name that pulses within you and all those who are ill, but you come with wholeness today, and we lift you up. And all those in accordance, we say,
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So beautiful, so beautiful. יעמוד אמת משה בן אברהם ושרה and Ahava bat Avraham Sarah. Ay, nay, 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 da, day, da, day, da, day, da, day, hey, da, day, da, da, da. Yai for third aliyah. We invite Emet and Hava to come forward for this aliyah, the first for them as part of the Jewish people. There you go. Go ahead, one more time.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bakar banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. ויהי עשו בן 40 שנה, ויקח אישה את יהודית בת בארי, החיתי, ואת בסמת בת אילון החיתי, ותהיינה מורת רוח ליצחק ולרבקה, ויהי כי זקן יצחק, ותחנה עיניו מראות, ויקרא את עשיו בנו הגדול, ויאמר אליו בני, ויאמר אליו הנני, ויאמר הננה זקנתי, לא ידעתי יום מותי, ועתה שנא חילך תלייך בקשתך, בצא השדה בצודה לי ציד, ועשה לי מטעמים כאשר אהבתי, והביאה לי ואוכלה בעבור. תברכך נפשי בטרם אמות.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'kiyei lo nata b'torkeinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen, amen. מי שברך אבותינו ואמותינו, הוא יברך את אמת משה בן אברהם ושרה ואת אהובה בת אברהם ושרה, ושאלו לכבוד המקום לכבוד התורה לכבוד השבת. ויזכר זה הקדוש ברוך הוא, איש בריא יצילי מכל צר וצוקה, מכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם. May the source of life bless you, two seekers who found your way from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania into the heart of this community that brought you together, lechasod b'tzel hashchina, to come underneath the overhang the protective encasement of the divine presence. You found your way to a wonderful community in Gettysburg and then found your way here online into our community and into our hearts. And through the steady presence that you have had in this community over the last months, the steady hand of Rabbi Rivera in her teachings with you and in your studies with her, and through your presence also in other classes with Rabbi Kolaresis and with me in my classes, you came to absorb and to learn and to investigate and to own your part, your chelek in this community and in this broader lineage that you have grafted yourselves onto. We are so blessed by your presence, by your questions and your love and your healing and your vulnerability and your strength and all of the things that you have brought with you that I hope you continue to bring forward as you participate in this community and in many others who will be the beneficiaries of your wisdom and of your life experience and of your perspectives. We stood together with Rabbi Kolaresis, myself, and Rabbi Vera on a rooftop. Fiddlers on the roof we were, all of us, in fear of the rain that was coming, that was held back that morning, November 11th, Veterans Day, at 11 o'clock. As we held onto the talit of my teacher and onto the wisdom of this tradition, of all of its practitioners, all of those who have come before you. And on that roof, surrounded by this community, you also were invested by all of those who have come before, who have chosen to be a part of the Jewish people. And so we bless you with joy, and we bless you with continued health and happiness and healing, right? And also with continuing to participate and to give what it is that you alone can give to this community, to other communities, to the Jewish people, and to the world at large. May this aliyah be for aliyah, for lifting up and for elevation. And we all say a big gezunta amen. Simin tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simin tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simin tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simin tov, yehei lanu, simin tov, mazel tov, simin tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simin tov, mazel tov, na 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 na, yehei lanu. Yada la 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 yada la la hey la 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 yada la 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 yada la la hey la 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 yada la ay 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 hey la 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 yada la 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 yada la la hey la 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 Mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov. Mazel tov, mazel tov. Mazal tov, mazal tov, mazal tov. Mazal tov, mazal tov, mazal tov, mazal tov. So many beautiful things. We invite you, Sharon Dolan, at this moment to be with us in Birchad HaGomel, and a blessing for your healing this morning as you have come through major surgery, and so we're so blessed to have you. So let's lift up Sharon as well with our response to her blessing. Hagomel l'chayavim, hagomelet l'chayavim, hagomel l'chayavim. Where are you, Sharon? Are you here?
I'm here.
Great.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hagomer l'chayavim tovot, shegemalani kol tov.
Amen. Misha gemalech kol tov. May the one who bestowed goodness on you and blessing on you. Hui gemalech kol tov selah. May you be continued. May that one continue to bless you with tov. And let us all say amen.
Amen.
Welcome back.
Toda rabah.
Mamash. Mamash. So friends, as we move into healing from this place as well, of course, we wish a refuah shlema and a healing prayer for the entire community, and the blessings of Hebrew, blessings of healing, of Hebrew and healing at this moment. So maybe Rabbi Mira, would you lead us in our healing prayer this morning from your heart, which is always so connected with holy and healing thoughts for this community.
Ana elna, Ana elna, Ana elna refanala. These words chanted by Moshe when Miriam was stricken and she was healed. Ana elna, Ana elna refanala. Meshaber Rabbeinu Abraham Yitzchak beYaakov, ואימותינו שרה רבקה רחל ולאה, הוא יברך וירפא את החולים. הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עלה בחילה קדושה. In this holy community, please bless those and let us be healed, those who are ailing. הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם לחזקם ולרפאותם. May the Holy One bless them with compassion and healing, restore them to health and vigor. ותשלח לה מהרה רפואת הנפש רפואת הגוף. Send them physical and spiritual and complete well-being. בתוך שאר חולי ישראל, שבת היא מלזכור רפואה קרובה לבוא. And though Shabbat is a time when we refrain from petitions, we do pray that healing be at hand. Hashtabag alav isman kariv v'nomar. In our community, we see Kathy Cecil Ryder, Adar Klugman Ginsburg, Ben Ginsburg, Bob Marks, David Graham, Rachab Lima, Nikolai Stefan, Beck Epstein, Abba Benjin. We pray for healing for Lynn Blacker, continued healing for Simabat Abraham Kohen Besara, Chaya Bat Olga Beleon, Matisyahu Yeshayahu Ben Chava.
And let us say, Amen. Rabbi Rivera, would you lift up our essential workers at this moment for healing?
Healing we pray for those who are afflicted in our communities. We're praying for Yitzhak Buxbaum, we're praying for Arnie Meyer, for Alan Dumaine, for all our loved ones. And we also say, please, those who are engaged in tending to them and caring for them, may they find healing themselves. And we lift up the names of those in our community who do this work. And we say, may the one who blessed our ancestors bless all those who care for them, our physicians and nurses and orderlies, our technicians, our home health aides, our EMTs, pharmacists, and those who bring food to us, our essential workers, those who keep our cities moving, our teachers, staff in all schools. Bless all those who put themselves in front of unfolding dangers of the world each day to tend to those whom they have sworn to help in our community. Dr. Judy Fried Siegel, untiring Dr. Mickey Fagan, Dr. Ariella Noy, Dr. Yoni Barnhart, Dr. Josh Stillman, Dr. Joseph Youngerman, Dr. Fairy Passeru, Dr. Steve Kaplan, Dr. Daniel Horn, Dr. Gita Lisker, those who take care of our people who are like our social workers, Melissa Stewart, Paul Brodsky. Bless them in their coming and bless them in their going out. Ease their fear, sustain them, source of all breath, keep them in health that they may bring healing. And bless the sacred work of their hands. And we say, may this plague pass from among us speedily and in our days. Amen, amen.
Amen. We return Torah, even though it's in the ark already. We separate between the Torah centerpiece of our service and what comes after. And we remember the power of Torah in our lives. And even as we put Torah away, this morning we also bring Torah with us wherever we go this morning. All of the learnings from Open Book and Open Up this morning. Eitz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomechecha meushar derachecha darchei noam lechol netivotecha Shalom Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'nashuva Chanesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu kekedem. As we take the Torah into the world, it is upon us aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, לתגידו לה ליוצר ראשית, שעשנו עם גויי הרצות, ושמנו עם משפחות האדמה, ששם חלקנו עמכם, וגורלנו עם כל העולם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, אבני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומשה ויקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו וזולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום, והשבותה אל לבביך, היא הוויה, הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני מלוך לעולם ואין, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Into this community we invite those who are in mourning, and specifically those who are with us today, who are in mourning in the immediate present. We are aware of that in our community at this moment. Alan Dumaine is lifting up his mother, Lee Brox. We are aware in this moment that in Detroit at this moment, our member Sam Levine is lifting up his father, Ellsworth Levine, who passed away this week. And so we bring them, as well as all of those here who are in our list this evening, this morning, this afternoon: Aaron Kintu Moshe, Anne-Marie Zangara Zati Munajat, Arthur Adler, Arthur Siegel, Bear Grushkin, Benjamin Wolf Tolushkin, Cecilia Romo, Charlie Dixon, Daisy Menkes Klein, David Rothstein, David Silverstein, Dr. Norman Crane and Devorah Stahl, Elizabeth Dubus, Michelle Baldridge, Evelyn Goodman, Felix Austin, Gabriel Gottlieb and Gerald Bregman, Gilda Koppelman-Rieger, Harav Adin Evan Yisrael Steinsaltz, and Harav Yaakov Tzvi Ben Liba, Harriet Bloom, Harriet Ingber, Helene Eilon, Ido Sheffy, Jason Andrew Brodsky and Seymour Brodsky, Jay Goldstein, Jean Rosalind Shore, Marianne Goldstick, Mark Evan Beitman, Mary Armstrong Meems, Myrna Feldman, Rabbi David Cooper, Rabbi Dr. Henry Dicker, Rafael Rios Gallardo, Rebecca Pat Cohen, and Reverend Robert Grates, Ruthie Lev, Sam Torgan, and Sandra Balsam, Sarah Mindel Bat Avraham Abba, Miriam Pesha, Seth Lesnell, Shirley Siegel, Solomon Marenberg, and Stuart Fred Fight, Susan Woloshyansky, Vera Goldman, Mickey Levin, Molly Javits, Maya Officer and Mark Jacobson, Thomas Crowley, Tav Sparks, Natasha Dawn Henderson, Kim Wetzel and Yoel Igal, Pauline Kabak, Judith Wachtel and Chaim Ben Lazar, Chrissy Thickbroom, Irene Weiss Miller, Leo Ezra Littbach, Kimberly Hall, Julian Cohen, Ruth Ackerman Forrest, Vicky Chesson, Saul Forrest, Susan Kennedy Marks, Pat Schneider, Nitza Bat Avraham Ufreda, Bela Bat Lifshe, Raya Bat Frida Yosef, as well as Larry Bloomberg and Dr. Matthew Rosenthal, Judith Trustone, Jerry Zatlow and Betsy Dean, Hiram Kasten, Claudia Medina, Rusty Gordon, Abba Ben, Jean Beck Epstein, Sam Willinger, and all of those who have no one to say Mourner's Kaddish for them today. We lift up the loved ones and invite you, if you are not already standing, to please rise if that's your custom for the Mourner's Kaddish, which will be on the screen in front of you. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא דברה חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, וחייכונו ויומיכונו וחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם, וליומי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר, ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן באומה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, and let us say amen. Yehi zichram baruch, may there be a memory hit that everyone gets from their loved ones. It gives them a lift and a smile and a blessing. Ein Eloheinu, everyone, as we turn to Ein Eloheinu, Ein Malkeinu, Ein Moshienu, Ein Moshienu, Mich Eloheinu, Mich Adonenu, Mich Malkeinu, Mich Moshienu, Node la Adonenu, Node le Malkeinu, Node le Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Tu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atu Shektienu, Horenu, Lifanech, Iktoy Nasamim, Hay la la la, Hey la 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 la, Dini la 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 la, Dini la 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 la, Dini la 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 la, Dini la 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 la. Hey, nalai, get your cup of blessing, everybody. Begin pouring it. Shabbos, everybody. Get Shabbos into this cup of blessing. So many thank yous and so many announcements. So into this cup of blessing, a couple of announcements, followed by a couple of thank yous. Just so all of you know, as we move forward into the week ahead, the week ahead will bring, of course, next Shabbat, which will be, of course, as usual, November 27th at our earlier time, 6 o'clock, and then, like today, 9 o'clock in the morning with the open book, and then 10 o'clock will be our worship service. But between now and then, there's a whole lot going on. There's acts of chesed that can be done this coming Sunday at 8 p.m. That's a program for all of you at 8 p.m. And also our West Side Campaign Against Hunger Turkey Challenge now through Thanksgiving Day. Check it out. It's on our website as well. Donate a turkey, sponsor a turkey. Also, of course, each and every day, you can begin the day Sunday through Friday morning with Rabbi Rivera and friends for our daily morning minyan and our Hasidic Masters class, in addition to all of the next page, which is Rabbi Rivera, Rabbi Kohler Esses, Rabbi Dorothy Richmond, Rabbi Daniel Silverstein. We have teaching with Ben Pearlstein, our rabbinic intern. So much is happening with lifelong learning, both in the yeshiva and also at the well. And we also have, of course, as I mentioned, Sam Levine lost his father this week, and so tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock there'll be a shiva for Sam, for Ellsworth Levine, for Sam Levine's father. And so we invite you all to be involved in that mitzvah and to be a part of the community that supports one another in moments of celebration and in moments of grief as well. As we come back into the house, here we are. So I'd love to see, let's see who's here. We got some folks here. First and foremost, before we look at all of you and your beautiful faces, we're going to take a look at the faces of those who are behind the scenes here. So you can see our davening leaders, our clergy. We just want each and every week for you all to see who's working, not just on Shabbat, but who's working week in and week out to make community possible. This incredible staff and clergy team, some people that I know very well on that screen. I live with one of them. And here behind the scenes this morning, who's been with us this morning behind the scenes? I think it's Heather Shore. There's Heather. Where's Rebecca? We need Rebecca Feldman. She's somewhere. Michaela is a medical doctor who is a part of the Romemu community in Belgium, who volunteers her time with us to help us. There is part of our staff, Rebecca Feldman and Heather. Thank you all for what you did this morning to make it possible. And some more thank yous, of course, to our davening leadership, to you, Rabbi Rivera, to this morning's Open Up with Rabbi Kolar Esses, to those who laned this morning. Thank you to Avi Green and to Lauren up in Toronto. Thank you, Lauren. And a big yasher koach to our to Emet and Ahava on achieving and arriving at this wonderful milestone. Into this cup of blessing, all of you and all of you here. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות, את השבת לדורותיהם בריס עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, עושי לעולם כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני, את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו סברי חבריי.
Chaim.
Into this cup of blessing, all of you who are here, and the week ahead, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, bodei pri hagafen. So as we turn towards one another this morning, this afternoon, knowing that we're all sanctuaries for one another, right? We are aware of that, right? So look around. Shabbos Heather, Shabbos Lars, good Shabbos Melinda, Shabbat Shalom Iva, Shabbat Shalom Brother Neil, Shabbat Shalom Joyce and Estelle, Shabbat Shalom Brother Sam and Steve, Shabbat Shalom to Jeremy Katz, we miss you guys, Wendy and Judy Gray and Judy. Thank you for joining us, Sarah, to lift up Emet and Ahava. Shabbat Shalom, Kathy Lynn and Sue. Shabbat Shalom, Sandra. Shabbat Shalom, Sarah T. Shabbat Shalom, Jamie. And with thanksgiving, be obeying, sanctuary, all for Shalom. Shabbat.